All right, people, it's a little after 8 here, so we should be all back from our break. Uh, and I'll also mention, although it's not going to be required, you guys are all just a bunch of words. Like everyone, all I can see is your name, which is great and all, but it makes me feel like I'm actually talking to humans more if I can see your faces. So although I cannot require you to, I would appreciate it if some of you could at least allow me to see some of you. That would be, thank you, I appreciate it. It just makes me feel like I'm actually interacting with people. Thank you. Good. Okay, so let's, we are recording, right? Did I press record? Yes, we are recording, and we're gonna do now the second half of, come on now. We're gonna do the second half of class, second half of the attention lecture, and I believe we should get through with this in about the same amount of time as the first lecture took. So the second half, we're still talking about attention, but we're gonna be talking about just some different elements of attention. All of these are talking about in the textbook to some degree. Oops. We're not actually going to talk about alerting attention. I don't think. Yeah, we're going to be talking about orienting attention, but we're not actually going to be talking about alerting attention. There we go. This is what we're going to be talking about: voluntary and reflexive attention, orienting attention, and vigilance. These are different aspects or different ways of studying attention. And we're talking about all of these. And the book talks about all of these to different degrees. We'll be talking about these same things, but I'll be talking about some of the things the book talks about, but I'll also be kind of adding some additional things compared to what the book talks about. So this would be an example of voluntary, or that is, I guess you could say, goal-driven attention. So there's a lot going on here. We'll start talking about this stuff over here. The basic way that the voluntary attention task works is that you are told to keep your vision on this thing right here. This is a fixation point. You're supposed to look there. And then there's something called an attentional cue, or relating to attention cue. And the attentional cue is this arrow. And what this arrow is doing is it's saying, hey, you're about to see something which is either going to occur to your right, or you're about to see something which is going to occur to your left. And that's what this, for instance, this arrow right here is telling you, hey, you're about to see something. It's going to be in the right visual field over here. Or this arrow occurs and it's telling you you're about to see something which is going to be in this left visual field over here. But then there's also these weird trials right here where the arrows are pointing both directions, which those trials are meant to be kind of weird, and you don't actually know which direction you're supposed to be paying attention to. You're basically like, pay attention to both the left and right. Basically, this attentional cue is telling you where in space to deploy your attention. It's considered voluntary because, for a couple of reasons. One, the cue is considered symbolic. It is this arrow. In this arrow, you have in your mind, you have the meaning. When you see the word arrow, you know that's telling me to attend over here, or the arrow is telling me to attend over here to one of the different directions. And so that's a symbolic cue. And symbolic cues are based on you understanding the meaning of the thing and then using like your free will to move your attention. Oh, I'm seeing the cue of the arrow pointing to the right. This means I need to move my attention over to my right visual field, which is over here. The cue tells you to move your attention. You know what the cue means, and so you decide accordingly to move your attention. And then the task is usually to respond to an object. Like here, it's a square. And the task would be something like, when you see the square, respond as quickly as possible that you see the square. And what they want to know is, do you respond to the square? If your attention says, hey, pay attention, the square is going to occur in your right visual field. They want to know, is your response time faster here compared to a condition like this, in which the arrow is telling you, hey, pay attention to the left visual field, but then the object that you're evaluating occurs in your right visual field. Can you guys tell me, in which of those two conditions do you expect that you would be slower to respond to the square? The top one right here or the one below it? That is the valid trial or the invalid trial. In which of these two trials do you expect you would be quicker to respond to that box when it appears?
The valid trial.
It is the valid trial. And you can see that this figure has a lot going on, but you don't need to care about the difference between the red and blue lines. What you care about is this slope right here, which both the red and blue lines have. The fact that in the valid trials, people's reaction times, which is what the y-axis is, the reaction times are very small. They're very quick here. In the neutral trial, which is this one down here, where the arrows are pointing both ways, people's reaction times are a little bit slower. But by far, the slowest reaction times occur in the invalid trial. If the arrow, the attentional cue tells you to point over here, but then the thing that you're processing right afterward occurs over here, you're slow to do that, which makes sense because you're paying attention to one side of the world, but the thing that you're supposed to be evaluating is occurring on a different side of the world. So naturally, you would be slowest in the invalid trials. This is an example of voluntary attention because you have a symbolic cue, which you can interpret the meaning of that symbolic cue and then use your free will to deploy your attention to the left or right, how you see fit based on how you interpret the meaning of that arrow, the attentional cue. Voluntary attention. Contrasting that with reflexive or automatic attention. Reflexive or automatic attention, I really do think of it, it's kind of like a reflex. It's kind of like something you do without free will. It's something that you don't necessarily have to use your mind to do. It's kind of just a natural response or reflex. So that's how it differs from voluntary attention, that reflexive attention is more like a reflex. It's something automatic you do without your mind. And the nature of the cue is different in reflexive attention tasks. So, and it says here you have a reflexive, not a symbolic cue. So this is a cue where the meaning of where you're not interpreting the meaning of the cue. Your intention is not influenced by your understanding of the meaning of the cue. The cue works by being very salient. It's something that grabs your attention and kind of pulls your attention away from whatever you're looking at. So in these tasks, you're always looking at this thing right here, the fixation point. But then the cue in this exact study is like a flash of lights, these 4 white circles that appear in your peripheral vision. Those 4 white circles are surrounding either this box right here, or they're surrounding this box right here. So once again, the cue either occurs on the left side of the world, or it occurs on the right side of the world. And you can kind of think of this, it's kind of like the 4 white circles are kind of like if you were looking at me right now, but then your little brother or little sister, your parent was in your peripheral vision and they're doing something like this, it's kind of stealing your attention away from what you're trying to look forward. But if someone's moving about in your peripheral vision, it kind of steals your attention. And that's the same thing that's supposedly happening here. You're looking at the fixation point, but then these 4 white circles appear in either your left or right visual field. And the idea is that they're supposed to pull your attention to the side of the visual field that they just occurred. So they occur briefly, and then they disappear, and then a target appears. And the target can either occur on the same side of the same side that the attentional cue occurred, or it can occur on the opposite side, which is not shown. The one shown here, the target is occurring on the same side as the attentional cue. So you tell me, do you guys expect that in the condition which is shown right here, would you expect that the reaction time to respond to this target would be quicker here, or would it be slower? Is this the quick one or the slow condition of this experiment? Anyone have an idea? The cue occurs over here. The target can occur on the same side, or the cue can occur over here, but the target occurs on the opposite side. In which of those 2 conditions would you expect people's reaction times to be quicker?
In the first one.
Yes, the first one, the one which is shown. This would be like the attentional cue is telling you, hey, pay attention to the left side of the world. It's like someone's waving their hands on the left side of the world. And then the thing that you're supposed to process occurs on the left side of the world. It occurs on that same side. Your reaction time should be faster when the thing occurs over here compared to when it occurs over here. Wherever the salient cue occurs, it's pulling your attention to that side of the world. And whatever happens on that side of the world, you're able to process it a little bit faster. So this is, again, reflexive attention because the cue, it steals your attention. It's more like a reflex, whereas with the arrow that we saw in the voluntary attention, you understand the meaning of that cue, and then you use your free will to supposedly move your attention to the left or right. So one, you're using your mind, your free will to move your attention, and the reflexive attention task, it's your attention is being stolen from you, or it's being, you can't control it as easily. It's being taken from you. Any questions on the difference between voluntary and reflexive attention? Okay. Oh yes. So here's one of my all-time favorites. I'm curious to know how this will work, considering that we're doing this over Zoom. This one worked great in the classroom. I don't know how well it's going to work here, but we're going to try it anyway. And I would like to add that these, if you click on these links, they take you to YouTube videos that I posted. And so if this demonstration does not work well live in class, I encourage you to go to these YouTube clips and do the demonstration on your own computer later, like when you're studying for the test or whatever. So this is called the lines and beats task, or it's actually more formally known as the pip and pop task. And it involves orienting attention. And so I believe in the notes portion somewhere there I have orienting attention is just, it's a subtype of attention basically. And this is the way most of the the attentional studies we've talked about have worked. It's basically when you have an attentional cue, which encourages you to deploy your attention to some specific point in space. And so this is just another example of a study where it's looking at how an attentional cue can influence the way your attention is oriented to a certain point in space. Your attention is deployed to a certain point of space. So I'm going to click on these links here. Hopefully they don't take too long to start up. And you're going to see a bunch of lines of different colors on the screen. And your task, you're going to look at the fixation. Actually, maybe I can go ahead and start this up. Okay, good. Can you guys see that? Can you see this? Okay. So you're going to see all these things here in a second. These, oh, it looks, is it really dim? It looks dim to me on mine. Oh no, it's just because I'm holding down a button. Okay, good, it's going to work. Okay, so you're going to see all these little colored lines on the screen in a second. And most of them are tilted a little bit, except for one of them is a perfectly horizontal line. Your job is to focus on that fixation point in the center of the screen, and then using only your peripheral vision, I want you to find the horizontal line. Anyone have questions about the instructions? Okay, see most people shaking their head no. So I'll go ahead. Fixation point in the center, use your peripheral vision to find the horizontal line, the one that is flat. This one's supposed to be hard, so if you're having trouble, that's okay. This is the condition which is supposed to be hard. And I'll admit, the first time I did this, I did not use my peripheral vision. I just went straight to cheating and looking all around and not using my peripheral vision. Let's turn this back on here. Did anyone find it? Anyone think they found it? Just say yes or no if you think you found it. You can cheat now. Go ahead and cheat and see if you can find it. And then here is quadrant 1. We'll use the Cartesian plane. This is quadrant 1. This is quadrant 2. This is quadrant 3. And this is quadrant 4. Can anyone tell me which quadrant? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 1, 2. It is 2. How? Yeah, I wish I could get a show of hands, but we're just not in the classroom. We have right here in particular, this is the flat line right here. I am very much curious to know how many people got this right. And I'll just tell you from experience, students usually struggle with this one, and most people do not find it. Or if they do find it, it takes them a very long time to find it. So this is the visual only condition. There is no, it's called the tone absent condition. Now we'll go to the other one here. This is the one that I'm not as sure how this is going to work online, but we'll try it. And if it doesn't work that well, then you'll have to do it by yourselves later on. All right. All right. Okay. So same task. The line is the horizontal line is in a different place, but once again, you're gonna fixate on the fixation dot in the center. Use your peripheral vision, and you're gonna try and find that horizontal line, which is somewhere in the array, and then we'll see if it's easier this time. just curious, does anyone think that this one's easier? I see one person nodding, which is very helpful. I see a person shaking their head no. I'm very, very curious. I really want to know how many people are getting this, but it's supposed to be easier, and I'll show you the data that's showing that it is. I'll continue going. I'll continue go a little, 10 more seconds. So out of the people that thought that this one was easier, can someone explain to me why they thought it was easier that time?
Because when the beeps happened is when that particular line flashed.
Yes, good. So it did work. At least for some of the students, this demonstration did appear to work. So I'll say that again. All of those lines were changing color, but every time you heard a beep, only one of the lines was changing color. And the one line that was changing color was the horizontal line. So the change of color of the horizontal line was synchronized with that pip sound, that tone sound. And every time it changed color, it was synchronized with the beep. And so let's do it let's do it for like 10 more seconds just so you can see, and I'll show you where it is. Right here, quadrant 1, there's the horizontal line. Every time it changes color, you hear that sound as well. Okay, there you go. And so you can look at the data here from this same experiment. Shown on the y-axis here is reaction time, and then the white boxes are the tone absent, meaning there was no tone, and then the black boxes is the tone present, meaning there is a tone. And can you guys tell me in which of the two conditions were reaction time faster to find the correct line according to these data?
With the tone present.
You nailed it. That's right. It's in the tone present condition. And you can see that that's the black boxes. The reaction times are significantly lower, and it's a strong effect. It's a significant effect where the reaction times are quicker in the tone present. There's smaller reaction times, quicker reaction times compared to the tone absent. And so in this study, can someone tell me what is the attentional cue in this study? What is the thing which is kind of making you orient to a certain point in space?
The sound.
It is the sound. So this is an interesting thing because it's a visual attention type of study. You're paying attention to something which is visual, but it's actually the sound of something which is causing your attention to go to a certain point in space. To be a little bit more specific, it is actually the synchrony between the color change and the sound occurring that is the attentional cue. But if on a test you just said, in the test I would ask you something like, yeah, I don't know how I would respond, but if the test, if you indicate that you understand that the sound is the important part of the attentional cue, then that means that would be what I would want you to know for the test. So basically the sound is the attentional cue. In particular, it's the sound being synchronized to the color change, which is the attentional cue. But this is a type of orienting attention because you're directing your attention to a particular point in space. Okay, so the last type of attention we're going to talk about, I guess we have two more topics, vigilance, and then we have one other topic related to, a couple more topics, I guess, actually. So vigilance is another type of attention, which a term which is often used for this is like open attention. And vigilance has been studied primarily with the idea that when you are like evolutionarily older times, animals would have to leave their caves, or they'd have to leave their forts wherever they live to go find food. And when you are out finding food, you are more exposed to predators. And so in theory, we've evolved so that part of our mind, part of our attentional system is involved with kind of scanning for potential threats that could occur. We're engaged with one type of task looking for food, but we're simultaneously kind of looking for a tiger or whatever, or bear or something that could potentially try and eat us or kill us while we're doing something else. This is vigilance, the idea that we're monitoring for potential threats. while we're performing some other type of task. So yeah, it could be considered a type of a learning attention, alerting. That's a term which is in the book. I haven't talked about it too much in the lectures, alerting attention. The thing that I'm going to talk about most is how there's some evidence for hemispheric differences for vigilance. That is the left and right hemisphere, according to some studies, one hemisphere seems to be more important for kind of monitoring for potential threats, potential predators than the other. And so the coolest evidence for this comes from the chicken dual task studies. And I have an abstract here. I know it's really small, but if you really want to, you can read the abstract if you want a different way of wording it than I'm going to. So in these studies, we have these chickens, and they're performing, the primary task that they're doing is they're looking for food grains. But it's hard because, so a food grain for a chicken is going to be a small little thing, and it's on like a floor. And so on the floor, there's a couple food grains, but what there's a lot of is pebbles. So there's a lot of pebbles, but there's a couple food grains. And so the chicken is having to really focus their attention to say, I don't want to eat the pebble. I want to only eat the food grains. That's the thing I'm looking for. So they're having to use their attention. They're having to pay a lot of attention to find what is the food and what is the not food, and the thing that on the floor or wherever the food is. Simultaneously, though, in these studies, sometimes they would have it where an actual predator would appear in like a picture of a predator would appear somewhere in the chicken's peripheral vision. And what they were interested in was which eye did the chicken used to use. So you have one eye which is available. I'm turning my head. One eye is available for the chicken to perform the food task, looking for the food grains, while the other eye tends to be used to be looking for vigilant attention, to be looking for potential predators. And so the question is, which eye do the chickens tend to use to look for the food grains, and which eye do they tend to use for vigilant attention to watch out for predators? And the answers are right here. They tend to use the right eye to look for food grains, and they tend to use the left eye to watch out for predators. So I think we might have talked about this. I'm trying to think if we have we talked about which visual field, or which eye, if information is presented to your right visual field, which hemisphere does most of that information go to? Have we talked about this in class?
The left.
Yes, the contralateral organization of the brain says that basically things that occur in your right visual field, most of that information goes to your left side of your brain. Stuff that goes to your left visual field, most of that information goes to your right hemisphere of the brain. And so based on these findings then, which hemisphere tends to be more important, at least in chickens, for vigilance? Can anyone tell me which hemisphere appears to be more important for vigilance based on these findings?
The right.
It is actually it is actually the right hemisphere. It is the left eye, but it is the right hemisphere which is more important for vigilant attention. Because the chickens tend to use the left eye to watch out for predators. The left eye goes to the right hemisphere. So it's kind of like, you can imagine they're using the right hemisphere to help watch out for potential predators, while they're using the left hemisphere, the right eye, to help them find the food grains that they're looking for. So this is a dual task study, and it's one that shows that vigilance seems to rely more on the right hemisphere than the left, at least in chickens. There are, by the way, fMRI studies in human beings which support this idea that the right hemisphere is more important than the left for open, vigilant attention. Okay, so you don't need to, so a little bit more about vigilance in humans, just to know, like, what are the real life applications of this in modern day society? And the best probably modern example would have to be radar detection in war. And so this is a type of vigilant attention that people use, to this day, where you would be, if you were looking at the radar, your job is to find enemy planes. And if an enemy plane comes, you want to detect your authorities as quickly as possible, because you want to avoid, getting killed in the war, getting bombed by the enemy planes. So this is a type of vigilance task. And that's really, it's vigilance, because you're looking out for a potential predator. And you don't know where the potential threat is going to come from. It's going to come potentially somewhere on the radar screen, but you're having to kind of just keep your attention open, and you're searching for a potential threat that could occur. So this is like a human application of this idea of vigilant attention. Some interesting things about vigilant attention in humans is that we're really good at doing vigilance for about 15 or 30 minutes, but then after that, we get really bad at it, which makes sense because you're just going to get fatigued. And another real life kind of parallel to this, well, let me see if anyone can get this. What do lifeguards do, which is consistent with this idea of 15 to 30 minute maximum of vigilant attention? How is what lifeguards do relevant to this idea of vigilance in 15 to 30 minutes of, good, you can be vigilant for 15 to 30 minutes, but after that, your mind is kind of mushy.
Are you talking about shift change?
Yeah,
Yes.
they move their posts.
Exactly. Yep. They change their shifts basically. And I go to my pool sometimes during the summer at the J, and you like I think it's around every 20 minutes, maybe even less than 30 minutes. But definitely no more than 30 minutes. You'll notice the lifeguards change. Lifeguards are kind of just changing constantly. And the reason is what lifeguards are doing. It's a job of vigilance. They're kind of monitoring the pool. They don't know where the potential thing is going to occur that's bad, but they're kind of constantly monitoring the pool for a potential, I don't want to say it's a threat to them, but it's a threat to the people that they're looking out for, the children or the people that are swimming in the pool. And they can use their attentional resources to do this for about 15 to 30 minutes, but then they get bad at doing it because they get tired, they get fatigued. And so they take a break to kind of refresh themselves, because you want someone who's going to be watching out for the lives of others to be fresh, for their mind to be working well. So that's another example of vigilance in humans. The stuff about theta and beta amplitude, I am not going to talk about that. And I will not test you about it either. Let's move on. Okay, so here's some cool stuff about an impairment of attention that occurs with individuals, particularly after they have damage to the right hemisphere of their brain. And it's called spatial neglect. And you can see it in all of these different examples right here. So here, an individual with a right hemisphere brain damage was asked to draw a clock. And if you notice, it's pretty obvious that the left side of the clock is missing. Here in this thing right here, the participants saw this picture, and their job was to recreate the picture. They're supposed to draw the picture. And once again, you notice that the left side of the picture is missing. Here, the participant with the right hemisphere stroke, they would see this cat, and their job is to draw this cat as well as possible. And you notice once again, the part of the cat is missing. Which part of the cat is missing?
Left side.
Yeah, once again, it's the left side. And so this is unilateral spatial neglect. It almost always occurs with right hemisphere lesions, which is an interesting little puzzle that, to my knowledge, no one really understands exactly why this is. There's some theories. I think your book talks about it a little bit. But you get contralateral neglect. If you have damage to your right hemisphere, it basically makes it so that you have a lot of difficulty paying attention to things in your left visual field. Damage to the right hemisphere causes a lot of inability or difficulty paying attention to things in your left visual field, which is what we're seeing here. When you're drawing the clock, the person doesn't notice that they forgot to draw the left side of the clock because they're not even paying attention to that side of the clock. They can only pay attention to the right side of the clock. They have difficulty paying attention to the left side. And that's because of their right hemisphere damage. What's interesting, though, is that people with left hemisphere damage, they actually usually don't show strong spatial neglect at all. So you get really strong spatial neglect with right hemisphere damage, and it causes your inability to pay attention to the contralateral visual field, that is the left visual field. So here's another example of, this is a task which is used for people to determine who has neglect, that is attentional neglect. And so your job would be, you would see lines like this right here on a piece of paper. And your job as the participant is to bisect them. Bisect means to draw a vertical line through the middle of the line, as much through the middle of the line as you possibly can. So right here, I think it'd be right there. For this one, it'd be like right here. For this one, it'd be like right here. Over here, for this one, it'd be like right here. Your job as the participant is to bisect the lines, put a vertical line through each one, straight through the middle. And so looking over here, you notice these are from patients. So these are individuals that have right hemisphere damage. Looking at these, would you guys say yes or no? Are the people able to bisect the line effectively?
No,
Yeah, it's not. And can you tell me what did you see that, why did you say that? What did you see that makes you give that correct answer?
because the two halves aren't even. Like there's less space on the right side than the left.
Yeah, it's like they're offset. They moved the the vertical line that they drew is too far to the, will you tell me, is it too far to the left or is it too far to the right?
Too far to the right.
Yeah, it's too far to the right. So once again, this is kind of seems like they're ignoring the left side of the line. And because they're ignoring the left side of the line, they don't actually realize that they're not in the middle. They actually think, to them, apparently, that looks like the middle of the line. The reason it is because it's almost like the left side of the line doesn't exist for them. And so when they draw that vertical line, they're like, oh yeah, this is through the middle. But in reality, just because they're not able to pay attention to the left side of the line, that makes them offset. They move the vertical line too much to the right.
Like, could they not even perceive like the three that on the far left? That aren't
Yes,
even-
you read my mind. The other thing I was about to ask is, what other evidence is there of neglect in this study? And the other evidence of neglect, as was just stated, is right here. These three lines right here, they didn't even see them. Right here. Why did they not see these? You guys have any idea? They saw all the ones over here, but they happened to not see three lines over here. They have right hemisphere damage. Why did they not see those three over there?
Because they're on the left side of their spatial field.
Yep. So there's two different pieces of evidence here that people with right hemisphere brain lesions have problems attending to the left visual field. One, they missed these three lines altogether. They just completely missed them because they're in the left visual field. But then when they're looking at each individual horizontal line, they kind of neglect the left side of each individual line, which causes them to bisect it too far to the right. They're not very good at the bisection task. Is that a question? Someone have a question? Okay, no? Okay, so the last thing that we're going to talk about, and then we'll be done with the lecture, and then you can do your quizzes. You have two of them today. The last thing is visual search, which they call it feature integration theory. I guess you could call it a theory, but well, I guess the things that I want you to know these terms, pop-out search and conjunction search, and I want to know how reaction times differ between them. So in these search tasks, you're always looking for a target. And for instance, the target here is, anyone want to take a guess what the target is here? What is the thing which is unique?
A red O.
Yeah, the red O is the target here. And the red O, by the way, is also the target over here. So for both of these examples, the thing that people are searching for is the red O. That is the target that they are searching for. But looking at these two, the pop-out search condition and the conjunction search condition, in your opinion, which one of these is easier looking? In which task does it feel like it's easier for you to find the target?
Task A.
Yeah, the pop-out search, letter A, task A would be the one which seems easier, and the reaction time data clearly support this. And you can see it if you look down here at the data right here. The pop-out search is the blue line. Conjunction search is the red line. Set size, by the way, is just a matter of things which are not the target. And for the pop-out search, you can see people are always quick. The reaction times are always small. But for the conjunction search, you can see that the reaction times are relatively bigger than they are for the pop-out search. So it's kind of important to really analyze why people are slower for the conjunction search. And I've kind of written it out for you. It's because in the target search, in the conjunction search, the target it shares features with the distractors. So what is in this one right here, what is the feature that the target has which is completely unique?
It's a different color.
Yes, the color red makes it completely unique. But in this one over here, does the target doesn't have a single property which is unique to it. What are the two properties that the target shares with many of the different distractors? What are the two properties that the target shares with the other distractors?
Color and shape.
Yes, color and shape. Good, you got that one quick. The color of redness is shared with some of the distractors. For instance, we know that this is the target, the red O, but this red X, these other X's are also red. So the color red is not unique to the target. But the shape of the target is not unique to it either. We have this O here, but we have a whole bunch of green O's as well, which are distractors. So in the conjunction search, we have a target, but the target does not have a property which is completely unique to it. It shares properties with the other distractors. Whereas in the pop-out search, the important thing about the pop-out search, the target has a property which is 100% unique to it. Redness is that property here. There is no property here because red and shape are shared with many of the other distractors there. So let's do some examples. So is this a pop-out search or a conjunction search?
Pop out.
It is a pop-out search because of what property is unique to the target?
The color.
The color once again. And this one's easy too, but what has changed about this one? Other than the location of the target, we have this one right here. And then, whoops. What has changed from, other than the location of the target, what has changed here?
The number of distractors.
Yes, or in other words, the set size. But for a pop-out search, it doesn't really matter, right? This task is still pretty easy. Oh, wow. Sorry, I just found out my friend just had a kid. So that's big news. But anyway, get back on task here. Okay.
Congrats, friend.
Yes, yeah, thanks. He's an old friend. I've known him since I was like 3 years old. Anyway, so this is a pop-out search once again. The property is color. The target letter is has a unique color that is not shared by any of the distractors. An important thing going back to this chart right here. In a pop-out search, it doesn't matter how many distractors you have. In a pop-out search, the target pops out. It's always easy to find. The number of distractors really doesn't matter. It doesn't make the task much harder in a pop-out search. What about this one? Is this a pop-out search or a conjunction search?
Pop out.
It is a pop-out. This one's a little bit trickier, but it's definitely a pop-out. And can you explain to me how you knew that? What is the property that the target has which is unique to it?
It is a completely different shape.
Yeah, it's a different shape. Actually, it has two properties. One, it's the only 8, but probably the more salient property which is unique to it is what? It is an 8 while everything else is an S, but what is the other thing which is unique to the target?
Oh, it's vertical.
Vertical.
Yeah, I think the vertical is probably even more important. I would be interested to see if you made this a vertical S. I still think this task would be easy. I think it's the verticalness. There's really 2 features. This is like a super pop-out task because it has 2 features which are unique to the target. Both it's the only 8, and it's also the only vertical object, which makes finding the target here really, really easy. Okay, so this one is a little bit more challenging. Do you think this one is a pop-out search or a conjunction search?
Conjunction.
It is a conjunction search. Yeah, you guys are rocking on these. And can anyone explain? So this is a conjunction search. Why? The target is the horizontal 8, which, by the way, in case you're having trouble finding it, here's the horizontal 8 right here. Why is this a conjunction search? How did you know that?
There are multiple 8s and multiple S's, and the S's are all going vertical and horizontal, and all the other 8s are vertical.
Yes.
Multiple variables.
Yeah, there are multiple. I would say there are multiple properties, and the target shares those properties with many of the other distractors. But there's 2 of them. I want to make sure that we're very clear. What are those 2 properties that the target shares with many of the other distractors? There's 2 properties that the target has which are relevant here, and it shares them with some of the other distractors. What are those 2 properties?
Being horizontal and it being an 8.
Yes, there are other 8s here. There's many other 8s. So it has the property of object type, the fact that it's one of many 8s in common with many of the distractors. But it also has the property of orientation. It is a horizontal shape, but there's many horizontal shapes here. So it does not have neither its orientation of horizontalness or its object classification of being 8 are unique to it. So it does not have any properties which are unique to it. It shares properties with many of the other distractors. It has no unique properties, which is why this is a conjunction search. And so that is it for lecture stuff from chapter 3. So good, doing great on time. I will show you the, first off, I'll show you this quiz again. And if you want to take pictures of your screen, you can. Oh, let me find the in-class quiz. So I'll give you like 10 seconds to take a picture of your screen for the in-class quiz. For people that aren't viewing live, they'll be able to see this. You'll also be able to see this people will be able to see this on YouTube and take, in the future at least, I'll always show these on YouTube as well. And so you'll be able to, if you can't attend the class live in the future, you can go to the YouTube clips and you'll be able to see these questions too. Does anyone need more time? Okay, I'm gonna go to the origin of consciousness quiz as well now. Let's see, where did I put that? Here we go. So this is over book 2, chapters 5 and 6. And here are the questions. Let me move that thing so you can see them. So you might want to go ahead and take the pictures there. I'm going to leave this up though. Well, I'll put up the Blackboard turn-ins for these 2 assignments, and they will be due tomorrow at 11:59. If people have good reasons, obviously I have to be flexible. If people have good reasons why they can't turn it in by that time, I will definitely take that into consideration. I just request that you send me an email so that we can communicate about it. So now my recommendation is, I'll stop recording here.